What would you say if I asked you what the first ever Battle Royale game was? Fortnite? PUBG? The DayZ mod for Arma 2? Well, what if I told you that none of these answers are correct? What if I told you that the true OG of Battle Royales was one that every single person on Earth had to win to get where they are today? Any guesses? But what would a battle royale about sperm even look like? Well, if we take a look at the journey a single specimen might take during the fertilization process, it's not so different from a game like Fall Guys. Fall Guys has Bean Hill Zone, while the sperm have to travel through the uterus. Fall Guys has Team Tail Tag, while the sperm have to travel through the vaginal canal. Both of these processes have a series of levels the player must complete in order to obtain the crown. Or the egg, in this case. But we have one big problem, ladies and gentlemen. I have never made a multiplayer game in my life. And if you don't already know, and you're not a game developer, making multiplayer games fucking sucks. Oh, but what's that? What's that? A web-based game engine made specifically for multiplayer games that could support a bunch of players at a time, dude? Well, shoot crap and darn it, that would just fit my needs so perfectly. Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it now? The game engine we will be using is called Madio, and they also happen to be the sponsor of today's video. So shout out Madio for that. I appreciate you, and I love you. For real. I love you for real. And with all that out of the way, we can get started. So let's get this freaking show on the road, shall we? First thing I did was hop into Photoshop and drew up a nice, healthy looking specimen to be used as the player. Shit, It's not what we want. Now, to make our specimen move, I added Madio's default movement, which allows the character to follow the mouse cursor. There we go. Now we're talking. And I wrote up a little script to give the player a dash. We're moving a little bit. You see that? Am I tripping? Yes! But I didn't want the player to just be able to spam dash over and over again, so I threw it on a cooldown and called it a day. And now that we had player movement working properly, it was time to start working on level 1. The vaginal canal is the first level of the reproductive journey a specimen will take. Consider it like Dizzy Heights. In Fall Guys, it's like Dizzy Heights, but the reproductive system. And similar to Dizzy Heights, the goal of this level is to make it to the cervix. Wait, but what do we know about the cervix, boys? Say it with me now. Ovulation. Ovulation. The cervix only opens during ovulation. Hey, sorry, editing Bewky here. I just want to make it clear, a woman still can get pregnant when they're not ovulating. The cervix is not only open when a woman is ovulating. Sorry, just had to make that clear. Again, not a scientist, not a doctor. Also, no ovaries. L, you know what I mean? Freaking L, no ovaries. Haha, I don't have any ovaries. L. And until the cervix opens, most of the specimen will perish due to the vaginal canal's acidic environment. So I drew up these vein-looking things to act as the acid spawners. Then I modified Madio's existing tile map to be a bit more fleshy looking. And just like that, it's starting to look pretty good. But we need to make it so the acid spawners actually spawn acid. So I drew up a sprite for the acid, pressed play, and everything was looking good. Oh, Jesus Christ. That's way too big. All right, let's crank the size down on that, and we're good. After that, I drew up the cervix, and I know, I'm not an artist, but I tried my best, and that's what matters. I also made it so the cervix only opens after 30 seconds have passed. So the sperm will have to survive amongst the acid until the cervix opens. And with that, we can move on to level 2. The cervix is essentially a little tunnel that the specimen must swim through in order to make it to the uterus. But it's not as easy as you might think. I mean, you've done it. I've done it. I remember it like it was yesterday. We lost a real one that day. My first and only friend, Vinny. He was one of the good ones. He would have been a doctor, or a surgeon, or a mid-level software engineer. I'll never forget that day. We had just made it through the vaginal canal and into the cervix, and that's when it happened. Vinny got caught in a cervical fold. Sometimes at night I can still hear his voice. I'm sorry, I just needed to get that off my chest, and I don't mean to paint the female reproductive system in a negative light here. In fact, you know what the #1 cause of sperm death is? It's that little right hand of yours, buddy. You know how many dried up Vinnies I can find in that bedroom trash can of yours? Better clean that up before your mom gets home, or your dad. Shit probably looks like the beaches in Normandy in there, so many dead soldiers. You should be ashamed of yourself, young man. But back to the cervix. I started off by creating a long tunnel that the specimen will have to swim through, but I also wanted to add the cervical folds to spawn from the top so the player has something to dodge. Make things a little interesting, you know what I mean? Anyway, after way longer than I'd care to admit, and remembering how freaking radians work, like, what even is a radian? No one knows. I don't, you don't, no one does. Anyway, I finally got it to work. I threw a spawn at the bottom of the level, and we were good to go. On to the third level. In the uterus exist white blood cells that can sometimes mistake the sperm as an unknown entity, causing them to target and kill the sperm. But don't put that on them. They're just trying to do their job, okay? Don't put that on them, Ricky Bobby. In fact, the uterus actually helps the sperm quite a bit via muscular contractions that shoot the sperm up the uterus even faster. So shout out to the uterus, one time for the one. Anyway, if the sperm happen to make it past the white blood cells, they are met with a choice. A 50-50, if you will. Because connecting to the uterus are two fallopian tubes. Fallopi. One of which contains the egg, and the other, not a damn thing. Just kidding, there's stuff in there. It's just not the egg, okay? I'm just hamming it up for the video, okay? Anyway, it's kind of like the glass bridge. You remember Squid Game? Remember that? Remember that? So I did my best to sketch out the uterus and then got started working on the native cells. Now I couldn't find a reference image for these native cells, so I just based them off this old video we got in high school. Anyway, after that, I made them wander around randomly hunting for semen. Kinda like your mom. Just kidding, I'm sure your mother's a great person. She does cook a mean breakfast though, but I'm gonna leave that out. Anyway, when your the native cells come across a specimen, they will attack, and when your health hits 0, you go kaputs. Just like Vinny, R.I.P. And after that, I added these little boost pads all across the uterus to emulate the muscular contractions that help the specimen. Next, I set up 2 fallopian tubes that lead out of the uterus. And if you choose the one without the egg, you die. But if you choose the right one with the egg, you get moved on to level 4. Inside of the fallopian tube, tiny cilia work together to move the egg closer to the uterus. And in order to get to the egg, the specimen must surge against this motion. So I started off by creating one long tunnel to emulate the fallopian tube, and created a script that adds a backwards force to all the specimen every 3 seconds, making things a little difficult for our little boys. After that, I drew up the cilia in Photoshop, but I wanted them to wobble around like they do in this video. But I had never done 2D animation before, not like this, not with these fancy little graphics, and using Photoshop probably wasn't the best tool for the job. So after literally 4 hours of painstakingly animating frame by frame, I had this. So I added those to the game, but I forgot one thing. Oftentimes, the specimen, when they're fighting against the motion of the egg, gets stuck in the cilia. So I made it so the cilia will slow down anything they touch. And now it's much more difficult to maneuver your way through the level. But if you do happen to make it through, you end up in the final level. But before we move on to the final level, we're missing one key component that makes a battle royale a battle royale. Class, any guesses what this might be? Ooh, is it emotes? Nope. Wrong. Battle pass. Nope, idiot. Stupid. Battle bus. Nope, even dumber than the last person. You're stupid as shit. Ooh, is it, over-sexualized skins for kids to use? Bingo, Johnny, good job. You're not as dumb as the rest of your classmates. We'll be making sexy skins for, children. Just kidding. We will be adding skins to our game, but they will not be sexy. So don't expect any naked Chun-Lis here. No muscly cats. No sexy demons. And absolutely no Mr. Beasts, because that man has a body made for me.
Holy
Perfect.
shit.
I started off by opening Madio's shop skin system, which allows you to easily add skins to your game. I added some simple ones like hat, baseball hat, the Chalamet, spinny hat, the weeb, glasses, the insecure boyfriend, cat ears, the Brooklyn, a skateboard, the bussin' haircut, the Cuban link, the coquette, and lastly, the And with that, it was finally time to move on to the final level. The egg. We finally made it. If only Vinny was here to see this. I mean, I made it, but at what cost, you know? I miss you, Vinny. Rest in peace. Why? Why? Vinny, I'm so sorry. Anyway, the journey between the egg and the specimen is not over yet. At this point in the fertilization process, only a few dozen specimen remain, because the egg doesn't want any dummies coming up here and fertilizing it. On the outer layer of the egg, called the zona pellucida, are sperm receptors that allow the sperm to burrow into the egg. So shout out to the egg once again. Anyway, I started off by drawing up the egg in Photoshop. I tossed it in the game, but right now, the sperm and the egg cannot interact with one another. So I added the sperm receptors onto the outside of the egg and made it so the egg locks the sperm into place as soon as the sperm touches a receptor. And once all the receptors are taken up, the race begins. Now, actually, in reality, the egg has these chemicals that it shoots out and is able to determine which specimen will create the best offspring. The egg has agency here, is kind of like what I'm trying to say. In a lot of my research, that did not come up. The research out there on this topic is pretty bad, honestly. But yeah, I just want to make that clear. The egg is its own thing. It is an intelligent thing, okay? Anyway, this is the final stage of the game. So, of course, we need something complex. Something that really gets your brain thinking. I think I know just the thing. Simply mash left click as fast as you possibly can in order to burrow into the egg, and as soon as one sperm touches the inner layer, the egg experiences fertilization, and you are crowned the winner and become partners with the egg. Now, the reason I say partners with the egg is because the sperm in history has gotten a lot more credit than the egg, when the egg actually does just as much work as the sperm, and